Welcome back to Ramirez Unraveled. This is episode number 5. I teased this episode the last time we recorded with Miss Catherine Andrea. I have a very special guest I'm going to introduce in a moment. There are a couple of things I want to get to before I speak with our very special guest. First, I want to ask everyone to please like this show, right? Share this show, subscribe to the channel. We are locally produced. We are recording locally in Martinsburg, West Virginia, and we're just having fun. I've got a art plug I want to make. You guys know that I'm very supportive of our local music and art scene. So, Nick, let's pull up the very first graphic that we have for this episode. Awesome. That's it. I'm pretty positive this image is by our friend Jared Scher, who also did the graphics for Seven Arts Archives. Jared and I have been friends for an incredibly long time. And if I'm not mistaken, Jared lives in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. I'm big fans and friends with the Helgramites. Myself and Nick Antonetti have recorded the Helgramites and worked with them several times. So a shout out to my friends Adam Strausner, Mike Wilkins, Larry Johnson, and Sam Caffey. I don't think I missed anyone. They are incredible live. They've been around for an amazingly a long time. Prolific guys and just a blast live. So again, the Helgramites, Friday, November 1st at Bad Habits in Martinsburg, West Virginia. Which is the day after Halloween. And for the record, I took off Friday, November 1st, so I can go to the Bad Habits Halloween show, which I'm going to talk about in the next episode, as well as Friday, November 1st, and see my friends, the Helgramites. And Val, real quick, I've made a habit of trying to promote literature, right? So I've given every episode a literary dedication, and I think given the topics that we're going to get into, Nick, let's go ahead and bring up the second graphic that we have. That's right, Chariots of the Gods, originally published in 1968. This book has become one of the most influential and unexpected. I mean, I remember seeing the documentary as a kid, the Chariots of the God. I saw it at a drive-in in Harper's Ferry. I thought it was an incredible film. I read the book later in high school, and we have a clip of from Eric Von Daniken's podcast. Again, the book was originally published in 1968. The book is almost 60 years old. All right, so I want to introduce our guest. If you guys don't know the legend of Valiant Thor, let me tell you a little bit about Val. He is an alien. He is a shape-shifting creature from another dimension. And he originally appeared in the early I think it's 1952 in Manassas, Virginia. He landed his spacecraft there. Some local police go out, and this guy is all full of mind tricks and then just the Jedi stuff. So the police officers take him to the Pentagon, and then every level of security falls in line behind the one and only Valiant Thor, and they lead him all the way to President Eisenhower. And then he disappears in the underground for 2 years, but there's photographs of Valiant Thor from the 50s. So Val, I want you to know it's a pleasure to have you on my show. And let's talk about what's it like to be an alien and to be an intergalactic whistleblower.
Well, Don, first of all, thank you for inviting me here, and thank you to all your audience that's tuning in, to check this episode and all your episodes out. I think you're doing wonderful work, kind of uncovering a lot of what's been covered up over, the history of mankind. To answer your question, maybe I won't answer it. But to answer it in another way would be, I'm here to help you wake up. I'm here because you are waking up. Governments are coming forward and allowing information about extraterrestrial contact to come forward slowly, drop by drop. But a lot of that is because they have to. A lot of that is because they've been asked to release it in that way, because humankind is not quite ready yet. But many of you are, and that's who I'm here to address today. Those that have woken up or are beginning to wake up, are feeling that calling and recognizing that they are too star seeds.
I like that, Val. Nick, let's go ahead and play that first clip. The first conversation I want to have with Valiant Thor is Val had sent me some information on I guess you would call him a researcher named Billy Carson. I listened to, and again, I apologize. We haven't been able to record for about a month. I had spent a couple of weeks in Florida, but on the drive home, I got to listen to the Billy Carson, Joe Rogan podcast that Valiant Thor had recommended to me, and I thought it was incredible. So there's about 5 minutes of this clip I would like for you guys to listen to, and this really is an overview of who and what the Annunaki are, and that was definitely one of the conversations I wanted to have with Val. So let's play that clip.
Valuable just because it's rare, you're barely alive.
Right.
We're going, right? We're going back to full-on hunter and gatherer, our ancestors with spears and stone chipped, and then after that, gold emerges, and it stays.
Yeah.
It stays forever. Yeah. Now, when you read Zecharia Sitchin's book, he talks about this in the 1970s. His description of it was that they needed to suspend gold particles in the atmosphere because their atmosphere was being destroyed.
I kind of
then you move to
felt Billy
somewhere
Carson
around
out.
the
He's been
2000s
putting out a lot of energy
when
across the
climate
universe.
scientists started
He
proposing
is a
this
big
idea of
advocate
suspending reflective
for
particles in the
understanding
atmosphere, right?
the
And then when you
past,
realize the
but
unique
understanding the
properties of gold,
past
how unusual it is
through
in terms of like a building material, you can
literal
coat things. The reason why things are
translations
coated in
of
gold,
cuneiform
silver-plated, gold-plated,
tablets,
you can
which
take a
we've had
tiny
since the
piece of gold
40s.
Pause that
and
just
cover
for
an
a
enormous
second.
area.
He earlier in this clip, and I really recommend everyone listening to this, the whole one, he's talking about the tablets. Let's listen to the last few minutes, and then we're going to pick this up. This is I think everyone needs to get this one. Bring this up just a little bit there, Nick.
And what, the supposed story is, it's very common on Earth, very rare on Nibiru.
Right. Yeah, that's the story. And now when I started looking into this gold thing myself, and here's what I came up with. So when you start analyzing the text, you discover that there was an encampment in a place called South Africa at Adam's Calendar. Okay. Now at Adam's Calendar, there's actually the very first gold mines discovered. They're dating them back to about 200,000 years ago. And that's incredible because there's a building there that looks like a worn down structure. Now, in the tablets, it talks about the fact that the Ijiji, who were the working class Anunnaki beings who were cleaning out the Euphrates and Tigris River so they can create irrigation and create a bustling civilization. Also, they were doing the actual construction themselves. No people needed, just them working. They were like the construction workers, and Anu and Enki and Enlil, these leader gods, were like the foremen, the master architects and so forth, right? The boss. So these people were working, but they weren't supposed to be enslaved. They were volunteers. They got tired of doing the work, according to them, for about 250,000 years of labor on Earth, and also, according to them, on Mars. This is in the text. They call it Lamu. And so they decided to go to war against Enki and Lil and Anu because their demands had not been met. So they went to meet them in the Epic of Atrahasis. They go to Adam's Calendar. They go to that same structure that was discovered where that gold mine is located. I was like, holy crap, there is some link here to gold. Specifically, exactly, I don't know. But I know if you're an advanced civilization, you need gold. And the people that you have working it for you probably think, it's to adorn or to adorn yourself or in recognition of the gods. So they'll wear it and they'll utilize it, but not for technology. But what's crazy is they go to war, they go to get ready to go to battle. And then Enki says, I have an idea that will stop this war. There's an existing being on this planet, existing, not something that doesn't exist, existing. We can add our essence to it with a slain god. So they're talking about taking the DNA or genetics from one of themselves and mixing it with the DNA of the hominid that was here. It's not specified whether it was, an ape man or anything, but they don't specify in the tablets. But to create a worker being. And they began to do this genetic modification, probably disconnecting some of our DNA, making genetic modifications to us to get us to take orders from them. They inserted something called a worship gene, which was just discovered recently, that human beings have a gene inside of them that can be turned on and turned off. It can be turned off in a laboratory setting. It can also be turned off with a magnetic field around your head. And when it's off, you don't want to worship anything outside of yourself. You look inside. And when it's on, you look to get something from the outside. So this is incredible. And so they made us worship people.
Gene
yes.
inside of us to make us worship them. Wow, how genius.
It's incredible because then you're not a slave anymore. You're doing this for the honor of the gods.
And for people who think all this talk is really crazy, I want to put into perspective that we talked about this the other day, that during which war was it where the Soviet Union was experimenting? It was scientists in the Soviet Union, correct? They're experimenting with creating a chimpanzee human being hybrid that they would probably send to war.
Yeah.
So instead of having regular people, we would make this monster, this freak, ape man, and send him to war and have him crush the enemies.
Yeah.
It's like it's just how crazy is that? They knew how strong chimps are. I got an idea. Let's turn a chimp human, and that way, if he dies, who gives a fuck?
Right.
We made him. Get him to go to work for us.
Yeah.
And now if you're a supremely enlightened being, wouldn't you think of human beings with all of our folly and all of our chaos and all of our war and bullshit and the internet and disinformation and misinformation, wouldn't you think of us kind of the same way we would think about that chimp hybrid thing?
Yeah.
That was awesome. All right,
so the big question
let's pick this conversation up with your thoughts on the Anunnaki, your experience with them, Valiant Thor. What are the Anunnaki?
Well, the Anunnaki is a term that is found in the ancient Sumerian cuneiform tablets that Billy Carson was referring to, and that's where he got his information from, and he's translating it. Zecharia Sitchin was one of the first to really put this all out into a public forum through his interpretation of these cuneiform scripts. But the Anunnaki are from those which heavens came to earth, okay? One misconception is that Anunnaki is descriptive of like a race of extraterrestrials. It's not a particular race. It is a group, and there are multiple types of Anunnaki which come. We could just use the same word extraterrestrial from outside of the earth, visitors that have come down, okay? That terminology, the concept of being visited by beings from outside of the planet Earth runs deep within all of our traditions. Every tradition on the planet has the same types of stories. The nuances are different, but the same stories. A lot of the creation myths, all of the creation myths have the same type of stories. Beings that are not from the planet came here and created man out of mud, mixed their essence with mud, mixed their essence with something else that was here to create what we know today as the human race.
For me, and going on a talk with this, the whole idea of the Anunnaki and the whole Eric von Daniken, for me, some of the fascinating changes that I'm able to see inside of my lifetime especially in archaeology. I remember as a much younger person in the 80s believing civilization was like 25,000 years old, right? Like that was it. Like before that, you know, we're hunter-gatherers kind of thing, and we're making the stone goddesses that are, it's called Venus of Willendorf. But now, you know, 30, 40 years later, I know that line has been pushed back tremendously. Like they're talking about gold mines that are 200,000 years old. You know, there's places like Göbekli Tepe where they question just how old that is, as well as some of the monolithic sites. So let's talk a little bit about the monolithic sites. Like, are you familiar with Pumapunku?
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about Pumapunku and what you know about it, Valiant Thor.
Well, you know, Pumapunku, it's not one of the first megalithic sites. Some of the first and some of the really the oldest are the Egyptian pyramids, and from my understanding, the pyramids were created first and as a model, and they were created by Thoth, and as a model, and then the Annunaki were sent out across the planet to recreate the megaliths and to create civilization around those megalithic entities. You know, logically, there's no way that man would create them during those time periods.
Yeah.
There's no way they could. There's no need for them. As we know, there was no way of moving stones up to the top of 5,000 foot tall mountains. Okay, but those megaliths were created because they could produce something. There was, you know, from my understanding, they are all a form of energy terminal that was needed to give free energy out to the surrounding inhabitants. It was able to broadcast energy for electricity, for spacecraft, for light and power, basically, and it was a free energy source.
Fascinating. Nick, let's go ahead and take a look at the next clip that we have queued up. This is actual from Eric von Däniken's podcast, and I want to talk about the possibility of there being a secret space program. So we're going to watch about, let's go 4 or 5 minutes into this, and then we'll pick this conversation up. Damn ads, I know. It's amazing that Van Daniken is still alive and still among us, you know. I'm pushing 60, and I very much hope for absolute disclosure in my lifetime, and I think maybe that's why Van Daniken is still there.
Out there. My name is Eric
Such a distinct voice.
I am the author of Chariots of the Gods and quite some other book. And it is an honor and a pleasure to interview today Dr.
We're further
Michael
along today
Sala.
than ever.
He's an internationally recognized scholar in global politics, conflict resolution, and U.S. foreign policy. He has taught at universities at U.S. and Australia, including American University in Washington, D.C. Today, he's known as a pioneer in the development of the field of exopolitics.
Pause that just for a second, and we'll close it for a minute. Go ahead, Derek.
But just quickly, I don't want to, waste all the time speaking about the 100 monkeys, but there was an experiment done on an island, and they taught monkeys monkeys taught themselves how to gather a new food source on this island until all the monkeys understood how to gather a new food source on this island. And it come to find out, other monkeys not associated with those monkeys started gathering the same food source for themselves on other parts of the planet. And that indicates that the collective unconscious of this first group of monkeys was able to transmit that information to other monkeys that were not physically connected to them. Okay, that's sort of a fifth dimensional type of conveyance of information, that the monkeys were able collectively to perceive this new technique, this newfound, ability to get food without being physically present.
Did you see James Cameron's Avatar?
Yes.
Okay, and that was a similar kind of concept, like everything in the Force is alive and connected. It's all part of one thing, Let's watch just a couple more minutes of this Von Daniken thing. We're going to pick up this secret space program.
Institutions and political processes associated with extraterrestrial life. What made you to get involved with this subject, the exopolitics?
Can you bring it up just a little bit?
Well, my interest was in international conflict. And so when I started to learn about this cover-up of extraterrestrial life and UFOs, I realized that there is a very significant political dimension to this, that if extraterrestrials are visiting us and they are interacting with governments and militaries around the world, then this must impact international conflict in some way. And because that was my field of expertise, I was very interested in finding out, well, exactly how is this happening? Have there been agreements made? Have meetings occurred? Do extraterrestrials collaborate with different militaries in giving advanced technologies that can be used for war, developing spacecraft and all kinds of advanced healing modalities? So this is what really sparked my interest.
So do you think that extraterrestrials actually are here on Earth?
No question about it. Now I think that they are here on Earth, that they have actually entered into agreements with the major countries on the planet, the United States, with Russia, France, and China, and that extraterrestrials are helping different militaries develop different types of weapon systems, different types of space travel technologies. Sometimes these are used even for conflict.
I mean, this is a very explosive knowledge. I mean, what
That's
makes
good.
you sure
I think that's
that
good.
extraterrestrials are here?
I've heard rumors about a secret space program for at least the past 30 years. I was curious to know if you had any insights into your intergalactic travels, with your intergalactic travels.
Yes, the human's ability to enter and interact in space is one of the checkpoints for revealing all the rest of the history that has been kept from the humans. Okay. Hamid Ashid, he was a former Israeli defense minister and worked with the Israeli space program. He actually has already come out and stated that the extraterrestrials have asked that we do not publish our contact with them because humanity isn't quite ready. But the readiness, one of the indicators is that we are able to enter space, okay? I'm not sure if you're familiar with Project Artemis. It is an ongoing NASA program which is going to take us, one, to the moon to build a space station, and secondly, onto Mars. Exactly. And that's what we're working on now. Elon Musk's a big part of that. His engines may be the ones that drive us there, but we are, as a culture, as a civilization, as a planet, entering really into that space travel. So the time is now. It's coming. The government's opening up and revealing more information to us little by little. They've even changed the terminologies to UAPs.
Yeah.
Instead of UFOs, whistleblowers are coming forth by the droves that say we already have extraterrestrial technology. So the government only lets people know things 10 to 15 years after they've already got everything out of it that they could possibly need. They're not going to let us know. They're not going to reveal to the public what is currently where we're at currently. They're only going to reveal what has already transpired into the past. But I would like to, at this point, shift a little bit because we're talking about, physical reality, things that we can see, feel, and touch, right? There's a new concept that's working itself out. This new concept is talking about working within what I'm going to refer to as the fifth dimension. The fifth dimension is something that is not tangible per se, but it's within all of our reaches. And this is what people are waking up and becoming aware of. Our contact with the fifth dimension comes through our pineal glands, which is known as the third eye. It's an area of the brain, pineal gland, that is relatively dormant in most people. But once you become enlightened or triggered or programmed, to download information, your pineal gland is that receiver that will receive information that is downloadable in a sense from the universe, from the great collective unconscious. The pineal gland is represented in a lot of cases by the pine cone, and I know there was some imagery that we have of ancient alien gods that are holding the pine cone, just like this, and the symbolism is that they are relaying information through the pine cone. Our pine cone is the pineal gland. The pineal gland can be developed, can be opened up through kundalini, through lots of different ways, meditations. A lot of different cultures know about activating the pineal gland. In particular, the Hindus have always looked at that pineal gland to open up the fifth dimension. And that is where individually, if you want to bypass what the government is telling you, that's 10 years old material, stale, you can activate your pineal gland and get first-hand information, first-hand knowledge, and also first-hand contact. They're calling this contact of the fifth kind, close encounters of the fifth kind, and that's by opening your pineal gland. You can call the extraterrestrials, and they will come to you by you sending out a signal through your pineal gland.
And this is a perfect segue into our closing discussion with Valiant Thor. Val, because some of that stuff, I don't know, that one I think is let's bring up, what's our next video there? Top 10, right? My fear here with this intergalactic guys stuff right now is competing interests, right? I have this conversation with several people that are as deeply into this UFO thing as I am, or the alien thing, right? I'm not so sure that I can look at this in any way with what's it called, rose-colored glasses. I don't want to subscribe to Val's Jedi mind tricks here. I want us to be very open-eyed that Tucker Carlson says that there's aspects of this that are truly terrifying. So that brings us to our this reptilian thing, right? This whole idea of, is there evil? Is there intergalactic evil? Are we involved in an intergalactic war? And that's where your image comes in, and I'm glad you brought that. All right, so let's listen to, this is about Reptilian. This is the last discussion we were talking about. Anyone interested in understanding Annunaki, pick it up with, what's his name, Stitchin? Is it David? Zachariah Stitchin. Fascinating character. This one is David Icke. Is that how you say it? He's the guy behind the whole reptilian theory. Ike, Icky. Play that, number 10.
You're watching Top 10's Net, and in
This
the video
guy's got
today, we've got a
several
weird
things
one
on
for
the
you. It's the top
Reptilians,
10
too. This
things
is a
you
good one
should
to
know
start with.
about the reptilian conspiracy theory.
Number 10. Origins. There are two schools of thought on where the reptilians came from. Some believe they evolved here on Earth, left Earth, and then mastered intergalactic travel and then returned millions of years later. Others believe their home planet is in the Draco constellations. Supposedly, they came to Earth thousands of years ago and shared the Earth with people. Then they either decided or were forced to go undercover and hid themselves from our reality. They also started to interbreed with humans by altering our DNA, similar to the way that people alter computer code. The altering of our DNA had a twofold effect. They altered our DNA so we don't use our brain to its full capacity, putting a limit on our consciousness and making us easier to control. As evidence, some people point to the fact that we have reptile genes within our brain. In fact, the reptilian brain is the oldest of the three parts that control our brain. The second is that people with reptile DNA in them can be possessed by reptilians who live outside our realm of awareness in the lower fourth dimension. These human-reptile hybrids, considered demigods, were able to gain power in the ancient civilizations of Sumer, Babylon, and Mesopotamia. As humankind started to colonize the rest of the planet, the reptiles spread across the earth and became the royal families throughout the world. By having power in every single country, the reptilians have created a global prison that people don't even realize they're in. The prison was created by drawing country lines, which leads to endless wars and conflicts. Another way they control humans is by distracting us with media, entertainment, and even politics. They've also made the population stupid and lazy by poisoning their food, the air, and even the water. So just to sum it up, because it's a lot of very unusual information to take in, essentially the lizard people altered our brains to limit their ability. They installed most, if not all, world leaders throughout history. Those leaders in turn contributed to all major historical events. Finally, for thousands of years, they've been poisoning humans. And all of this was done to ensure that they control humankind. So right off the bat, the answer is yes. In this video, we're taking a drive to Crazy Town. Enjoy the ride. Number 9.
Okay, you can go ahead and end that. And we have some still images, right? After this one, is it 3 stills? Okay, let's bring up the first still. Okay, the reptilian alien origins of the human species. This is a book, but let's click to the next image. From ancient Sumeria, the reptilian people. And let's click to that last image. This was the one that Val was talking about. There we go, with the pine cone. So, what I found fascinating about this, Val, is to the right in Ecuador, you clearly have a reptilian. But on the right in Mesopotamia, you have the hawk. Is there 2 different Annunaki? Are the Annunaki the reptilian overlords? Or one of my thoughts was maybe the Annunaki used us, they made us the slaves, and then they left the planet, and along comes the alien or the reptilians, and they go, hey man, the Anunnaki have already done half the work, took the gold, least we can do is use these slaves. So I understand, like, you're one of many friends that has an interesting, if not positive, outlook with the aliens. I'm a little bit more right now a centrist on the whole thing.
Well, and I can understand that. You also have to understand, though, that there's been a lot of negative programming by the United States, in particular the CIA, to terrify people of extraterrestrials in general. So is it easier to say Adolf Hitler was really a lizard man and killed millions of Jews and others is it easier to say Mao was a lizard person that killed millions of his people, or that Lenin was a lizard man that killed millions of his people? Or is it harder to say that they were all human beings and did those atrocities? There are multiple types of extraterrestrials. The Draconians, though, I must say, do have agendas, and you must be leery of the Draconians. But the Draconians have been present and involved with humanity from the beginning. You must remember in the ancient cuneiform tablets, there were wars among the gods. We're not talking about, heavenly angelic beings. We may give them those attributes. They may do the same things, but they also created man in their image. Okay? So everything that man can do, they do the same. They can do the same. They have the same emotions. They're not separate from that. All right? They're not that in high of beings. They're not God with a big G. They're gods with little g's.
Then that becomes, for me, even, again, the most terrifying prospect, right? I mentioned this in our previous episodes. The more like us they are, the more terrified of them I am, right? I know what we're capable of. I know where we're at as a species. I know what we've done in our history. So thinking that something that has far greater technology than we currently have, it would definitely be, for me, some form of a threat. I've not always been of the belief that if they're here, and they're here, he's here, he's real, whether or not they're benevolent, right? You want to hope that there's some benevolence. And that brings, I'm going to let you, benevolence, I'm going to come back to this thought. I want you to say a few things, and then we've got a couple of final clips I want to share with you and discuss.
As you stand on the precipice of understanding, and as the human species stands on the precipice of contact, it's scary. It's a change. It's different. It's, maybe the human species has been lied to this whole time, which it has been.
Yeah.
Maybe, but, so what do it's scary to come out of the womb. You're in this nice soft womb of your mother. Everything's taken care of for you, food, everything, nurturing. You don't have to do anything. You can sleep all day. But, you have to come through that womb to be a human. And once you do, and part of growth is facing fears. Don't let the fears hold you back, okay? We are of the gods, as written. We are of the extraterrestrials, as is written and told to us in all of our traditions. We are the gods. We are those extraterrestrials. We're not the big god that created the universe, but we are all star seeds and part of the fifth dimensional activations that we're all going to go through. In fact, we had this opportunity in the past, and Earth and humans were not ready for it, okay? Now is another opportunity to elevate our consciousness. Don't let your fears hold you back from that. Okay, or don't, at least without trying to understand for yourself. The understanding is going to come regardless, so you can remain terrified, or you can start to adapt and deal with these possibilities. And that is why it's still not time yet for the collective to be enlightened to what's going on. It's only time, and the calling's going out to individuals to enlighten themselves at this moment. But the time is coming very soon when the collective will be enlightened to the presence of other intelligences that are not from the planet Earth.
Now, Valiant, Val, that was lovely. And I found myself thinking, were those the lines that you were using on those Heaven Gate cult people that you lured into, what was it called, where they beam themselves to the other, That one came across as really cultish and mind control, manipulation, and I bet that worked wonders with the Heaven's Gate cult.
I have no direct or personal experience with the Heaven's Gate cult myself, Don, but I'm sure you would have fit right in.
I love it. All
there's
right.
There's no, and this is where there's some confusion. There's no need to end anything you're doing now.
Never.
It's more of an opening to allow other experiences to come into your existence. You don't have to end you don't have to end anything except maybe some negative traits, maybe negative thought patterns. That's the only thing that's required to experience other beings from outside of this realm. That's the only thing that has to end. Your life and your existence now does not at all have to end.
And I understand what you're saying, and I only say those things partially in jest. And then there's, of course, the other part of me, because you sound like you're about ready to open an exorcist or something. The gates of hell and the fucking demons are coming in. I mean,
let's listen to what you're saying. So
right, I know I have some fear with this.
You have been programmed, as has all of the planet. Mm-hmm. You have been programmed. And you have to understand that initially. In fact, if I could rewind the conversation, because we've jumped ahead with some assumptions, I think the first assumption that we should just focus on is, did extraterrestrials come to this planet and modify a hominoid to become a human? You know what I mean? That's sort of like, you have to,
I believe that,
understand that in order to move in any kind of direction forward with the conversation that we're currently having. And I don't, you say you believe it, but you say you're afraid of it.
Well, let me speak only as a skeptic and, as a conspiracy theorist and all of that. And, part of why is being a little bit of an agent provocateur, because essentially we're talking in metaphors. I have another friend that's very similar to you that has this, spiritual look at it. I know Tucker has used the words spiritual beings and stuff like that. I don't want to accept or deny one possibility, with the reality of aliens. I don't know their motive, and I'm not willing to accept it as benevolent or malevolent. I can just say that I have a healthy amount of skepticism. And, when we talk about Heaven's Gates cult, and the other crazy story, I can't remember the guy's name, but he committed a murder in Roswell, New Mexico, where he had this girl kill his wife that he claimed was a reptilian alien or something. It's a fascinating story. And I'm rambling a little bit. So, I just try to be a little bit more skeptical with the whole alien thing when it comes to motives. That's all I'm trying to establish. And I don't want to be lured into, and I also believe that we're there's a lot of disinformation and there's a lot of mind games going on. But let's bring.
If I could.
Go ahead, yes.
I'd like to point everybody towards a man. His name is Chris Bledsoe, Bledsoe. He's from North Carolina. He recalls and recounts some of his contact with extraterrestrial orbs. They mostly come to him in orbs kind of a shape, but he was healed. He healed himself, and he's healed other people. He's been actually brought to the Pentagon and helped heal some children of some sick Pentagon officials through calling on the orbs for their assistance. The orbs, he has a remarkable story. In fact, he was terrified when he first met these beings, because they did come in the form of beings to him and his family and his children. But they keep coming back to him, and there is a woman that talks with him now who's kind of one of the head forces of these beings, and she has been revealing herself to him on Easter of all days, and she has been helping with the healing healing not just himself, his family, but others that come and ask for assistance. So, maybe for a future program, but, you have to remember the church want it to be the church. They don't want people to have contact with other, entities. So, what do? You have to make them out to be the bad guy. You have to condition people about, what's the bad guy. The CIA is covering stuff up in contacts with aliens. They don't want people to know about it. They've funded all kinds of movies and cinema in order to portray aliens in a negative light. So you just have to, I would recommend, like everything else, you try things for yourself to make up your own opinion. Don't let your programming make up your opinion for you. We got to get through the programming and make your own assessments. And I'm not saying all aliens are created equal, because they're not. There isn't just one type of alien. There are multiple types out there. And, the way to do it is through your pineal gland and through the fifth dimension.
That's awesome. We've got, this goes to the program, and 2 last clips, and then we're going to wrap this up. This is Rogan with Matt Taibbi. I like this one.
It's just such an extraordinary amount of power to give people the ability to censor people on the biggest public forum in the world. It's so extraordinary. And the fact that they can come up with these justifications for why this is a good idea without anyone pushing back, without anyone saying, do you understand where this goes to? This eventually leads to government control of all thought and speech. This is where you're going. You're allowing the government to influence you based on one specific problematic individual, and that could spread out into every one of us,
right?
All of us, easily, quickly.
Right.
Quickly.
I mean, we heard at the World Economic Forum, right? We heard
Brian Stelter was there.
Brian Stelter.
Brian Stelter's now at the World Economic Forum. What can we do about these problems?
He looked very comfortable there, didn't he?
Of course he does. He's with evil lizard people that are trying to control the world. That's his bosses. He knows how to handle that kind of situation. I've been around these evil lizard people.
He looked as happy as maybe he's ever been.
Well, he's probably very excited just to be working again in any way, shape, or form.
That's true.
He's not a guy that really is supposed to be in front of a camera, right? He's supposed to be a journalist, but he's not even good at that. So what he's doing now is holding water for the evil leaders of the world who want to institute hate speech policies nationwide and, centralized digital currency, and they want everybody to eat bugs, and you will own nothing and be happy. This is the fucking people he's working for now. Because he's basically a prostitute. And, they hired him to go over there and do that. And he's like, what can we do? What can we do better?
Yeah.
What can we do different to get everybody to stand in line?
Yeah.
What can we do? It's just such an extraordinary amount of power.
And let's go ahead and bring up, this is my favorite evil lizard person. He's only one of several, but I want to be clear. The reptilians are making themselves known. This is the World Economic, same thing that the Rogan and Taibbi's talking about. Let's play this through. And we're going to close this conversation. God damn commercials. Look at YouTube.
The dislike of and anguish over social media is just growing and growing and growing. And it's part of our problem, particularly in democracies, in terms of building consensus around any issue. It's really hard to govern today. You can't, there's the referees we used to have to determine what's a fact and what isn't a fact have kind of, been eviscerated to a certain degree. And people go and that people self-select. where they go for their news or for their information. And then you just get into a vicious cycle. So it's really, really hard, much harder to build consensus today than at any time in the 45, 50 years I've been involved in this. And there's a lot of discussion now about how you curb those entities in order to guarantee that you're going to have, some accountability on facts, et cetera. But look, if people go to only one source and the source they go to is sick and, has an agenda and they're putting out disinformation, our First Amendment stands as a major block to the ability to be able to just, hammer it out of existence. So what we need is to win the ground, win the right to govern by hopefully having, winning enough votes that you're free to be able to implement change. Now, obviously, there are some people in our country who are prepared to implement change in other ways. And
so
that's
you're
really
questioning
dangerous.
really if democracy can survive unregulated social media.
I think democracies are very challenged right now and have not proven they can move fast enough or big enough to deal with the challenges that we are facing.
What convinced you of your theory?
Go ahead and play it all the way through. It's funny.
Well, what started to happen is they just started to say it publicly in front of cameras.
Our First Amendment stands as a major block to the ability to be able to just, hammer it out of existence. So,
he's not the only evil alien and reptilian lizard person out there. I've now seen clips of Hillary Clinton saying the same thing, Bill Gates saying the same thing. All of these wealthy, powerful, elite people, I don't know if they're really evil lizard people, but they might as well be, because I know one thing, that their agenda is not mine. The New York, was it New York Times, or is that what it was that posted that article we were talking about? New York Post had a piece about, is the Constitution a threat to, our way of life or something? To have any mainstream American speak against the First Amendment is the First Amendment has been the cornerstone of what it is to be an American since 1791. The freedom of speech. These evil reptilians that we've been talking about want to impede our First Amendment. What's your take on all of this stuff, Val?
Well, we're currently living with an administration that is now public knowledge that they went to all the social media sites to limit, speech during their administration. They've covered up, everything, lied about, notebooks that were found, on certain individual family members of the administration. But the powers that be have always done this. The powers that be, are, going back to the ancient chronicles, children and offspring from the Annunaki, okay? They're not the Annunaki, but the Annunaki and others have had starseed children and started hereditary family power structures. The blue bloods. What does the blue bloods come from? The blue-blooded was, a term referred to
very familiar.
The ruling families of the world from China to Europe, and that they're all, and including the Roman Empire, they all trace lineage back to either a deity or a demigod. Demigods were children of deities, usually children with a human, and a god, or an extraterrestrial, and a human had a baby. Hercules, for instance. Venus was tracked to the first Roman emperors, was the Venetian heraldry. Anyway, the extraterrestrial seed, though, and the point, and so power is corruption. If you look into the Gnostics believe that everything is backwards that we're told. The Gnostics believe that the God of the Garden of Eden was the evil entity that created man to be his servant and to keep knowledge from him, and that the reptile that you keep referring to, the snake of the Garden of Eden, was a more enlightened, positive entity that tried to enlighten Adam and Eve. And when he did, and Eve took the bite of the apple, the fruit of knowledge, and she took that bite, the God that created them got so pissed off, he kicked them all out of the garden. Okay? Is the God of the Old Testament, that God, the positive one, or would the serpent be the positive one? So I just would like to throw out, as a skeptic to another skeptic, sometimes you have to check your own skepticism, because you may have been programmed in such a way that you're not a skeptic anymore. You're a believer. You're a believer in a certain way. I don't advocate for the powers that be. I don't advocate for authority. I advocate for the individual, because all of the power, Christ told us this, relies in you, the individual, that you can be like him or greater than him. You are the gods. That's the secret that the powers that try to control us do not want us to know. I'm here to enlighten you as an individual and all those that are listening that the power resides within you to know everything there is to know about extraterrestrial contact.
That's awesome. I think that's perfect for a close. All right, Valiant, Thor, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you, Don. Appreciate it.